the summer of 986, a solitary trading vessel plied out into the deep waters of the North Atlantic. Dwarfed by immense columns of ice looming over the frosted seaways, bombarded by waves as tall as the sky, dishevelled, frozen to their very bones, and constantly wet from the salt and foam permeating the air, soddening even the hardy waterproof animal pelts worn by the crew. The captain of the ship had promised a mighty reward once his men pulled into port, though that goal seemed ever remote to those unfortunate sailors.
You gotta think, fuck even being on the ocean at that time, back in those this is 1000 AD, nigga. 1000 motherfucking AD. You trying to be crossing fucking oceans in vessels, bro. Crazy, bro. The types of shit they were using across it, you know, like, bro, they didn't have nothing like what we got today.
For the most part, they were Norwegians, hailing directly from the fjords and valleys their ancestors had inhabited for time immemorial. Though some likely hailed from the colonies in Scotland and Ireland, a few even Iceland, that vast open land of fiery mountains and frozen plains. These men were used to enduring the elements. They'd been journeying on the high seas since their early teens. This voyage, however, had pushed them to the very limits of human endurance. Little did they know it at the time, but they may well have travelled farther than any other Europeans before them.
Aye.
The name of their leader was Bjarni Herjolfsson.
Bjarni?
And several weeks before,
I was gonna say BJAR or something like that. Bjarni.
He had promised his men a relatively easy journey to the new colony of Greenland. In truth, that newest addition to the Norse world was a frosted wasteland, named as such by its discoverer, the exiled Icelander Eric the Red, in order to attract the discoverer, the exiled...
I heard about this. I've heard of this dude. I heard that this is how Greenland became a part of the Nordic peoples in Scandinavia and shit, was because it was a place where they used to banish fucking, you know, they used to banish niggas to this place.
Exiled Icelander Eric the Red, in order to attract the much needed lifeblood of settlers from the other Norse lands. Now, long after they were supposed to have come into port, grumbles amongst some of the men had become standard. Murmurings on their lips. There was nothing green about this place. Only a frozen grave.
Ice, bro. Ice, bro. Right, because Iceland's like green, and Greenland's like ice, right?
Perhaps the whisperings amongst some of the more devout crew members called for a sacrifice.
Yeah, motherfucker,
Maybe
the captain.
They even thought of using the captain to appease the gods.
Yeah, the captain.
Save their own lives.
Bruh, you gotta go down with the ship, nigga. If we're fucking stranded here and we need to eat some, nigga, guess who's first on the menu? The captain, bruh. You imagine you're stuck on fucking Greenland, covered in ice. Your boat's all smashed up. The only reason you're on this motherfucker is because of the captain. If we need to be eating somebody, yeah, we don't need to say the rest.
No place in Valhalla awaited those who drowned on the high seas.
Is Valhalla like, is it heaven for the Norse?
Finally, after weeks of isolation, with food and fresh water supplies running agonizingly low, one of the men spotted something on the horizon. A sight they had long hoped and prayed for.
Village? People?
Drifting high up in the air above the horizon riding the thermal waves of the
Island.
Atlantic wind, a seagull, the telltale
Yeah,
sign
land.
of land nearby. Salvation. Utilising their expert navigation techniques, honed through a lifetime at sea and passed down from generation to generation
Fire.
since the beginning of time, the crew acted quickly, using the last ounces of their strength to follow the signs and row to land.
Fuck yeah, you would have been stuck out at sea and shit.
Within a matter of hours, mountains were seen emerging from the mist of the horizon. Half delirious from hunger and cold, some of the men might have suggested that they looked like they were home. Others thought them back at Iceland. Yet Bjarni knew better. He hoped that this was the land his father had moved to, the green lands just beyond.
I like how he said that, right? He hoped that this was the land that his father had moved to. I'm like, nigga, your father didn't get moved there, bro. He was banished there. He was imprisoned and then sent there. Vanquished, brother.
Iceland, though he couldn't be sure. As they came closer to this mystery continent, the mountains rose up higher and higher, stretching upwards impossibly as far as the eye could see. And below them, the men gasped at the potential of the place. Timber, so much of it, enough to build 10,000 ships. They weren't in Greenland at all. They'd bypassed it altogether.
So where's Greenland?
They weren't in Greenland at all.
Oh, that's Greenland there, but where's Iceland? Well, where are they?
They'd bypassed it altogether.
And Iceland.
Taken south and westwards on a strong wind. They'd fallen off the map of the known world.
Oh shit.
Though they scarcely realised it at the time, as far as the medieval saga traditions are concerned, Bjarni and his men were the very first Europeans to arrive in North America.
Oh shit.
In time, the place would come to be called Vinland, like Greenland before it, named in an auspicious attempt to attract settlers. Although the evidence suggests it really was a more hospitable place than Greenland.
Shit,
At least, it seemed that way.
I was gonna say, North America?
They met the natives.
Oh, got you.
Until they met the natives.
Oh, I see, I see.
Skraeligs, the saga writers call them.
Skraelings.
Native Americans. Their technology wasn't as advanced as the Europeans, but what they lacked in metal, they certainly made up for in courage and sheer numbers. Eventually, after a couple of aborted attempts at settlement, the existence of the Skraeligs would in part seal the end for the Vinland colony.
Wicked.
Bjarni and his men soon successfully arrived in Greenland, using the North American coastline to guide them there. Again, what they found wasn't particularly promising, although it did turn out that Greenland was a land almost entirely devoid of trees. Greenlanders would be back in North America, and soon, most famously in the year 1000, under the famous explorer Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red.
I see. That's the dude they were talking about right at the start.
To establish a working colony in the place.
Okay.
As we shall see, this remarkable people from the far northern reaches of Europe launched similar missions all over the world during this time, ultimately transforming what they found
all the fucked way to Central Asia,
a truly interconnected northern European system for the first time. For many historians, at least in part, the basis for the modern world.
True that. You gotta think about it like that too. True that. So you think Scandinavians way back, way the fuck back. I think this is before the Germanic tribes even.
The colony which Bjarni's father had emigrated to was small, but it was hardy, its inhabitants the hardiest of the hardy, outcasts or ambitious people whom Iceland either hadn't been enough for or they had been exiled from for crime. There weren't as many people as there were in Iceland yet, but there was land aplenty. Most of those in Greenland had themselves originated in Iceland. If the sagas are to be believed, Leif's father, Eric, had emigrated to Iceland from Norway after he was exiled for murder.
What did you just say?
Emigrated to Iceland from Norway after he was exiled for murder.
I was going to say, immigrated, I'm pretty sure he was banished. I'm sure Eric the Red was fucking banished, bruh.
Because are to be believed, Leif's father, Eric, had emigrated to Iceland from Norway after he was exiled for murder, before getting into a dispute and being exiled again.
Oh shit.
Mountains of fire and...
This nigga got exiled to Greenland or Iceland and then got banished from there. How the fuck you get kicked out of the place where people get kicked to?
Exiled again.
Exiled again twice.
Mountains of fire and ice held sway there, a brutal and unforgiving land. Though one that would soon breed a hardy people too, out of the thralls taken from Ireland and the Scottish Isles. In time, it would be the last bastion of Norse culture, thriving well into the late medieval period and writing down the stories we know today. Further west still, between Iceland and Britain lay the Faroe Isles, a land of sealers and whalers.
Faroes
When the
Islands.
Norsemen first arrived here, they found world-ender Christian priests huddling for warmth under rocks.
Oh, there was people already in the Faroe Islands. Oh shit.
Ender Christian priests. When the Norsemen first arrived here, they found world-ender Christian priests.
Out of it. I thought the Faroe Islands was, okay, I'm wrong. I thought it was like fucking colonial. I thought it was like, there was no one near when the Norse got there. You know what I mean? The Faroe Islands. I thought Iceland didn't have anyone near. Alright.
Huddling for warmth under rocks. For almost no vegetation grows on these isolated promontories. Those Christian priests had travelled there to escape the world, bringing their magic spells and croziers with them, to emulate Christ by going to the nearest thing to a desert that they could find.
Holy shit.
Unfortunately for them, the world came looking on dragon-headed longboats.
They literally went there on purpose.
The Faroes lay just a few hundred miles off Norway. They were likely the first of the many island colonies to be taken by the Northmen, possibly inhabited as early as the 7th century.
Damn.
Yet it was only a matter of time before these early Vikings and settlers moved on in search of richer pastures. It wasn't Iceland that they went to, not yet anyway. The first place they went was a small archipelago of islands off the north coast of Britain. We know them as the Shetlands. Here, some Norsemen may have mixed with the natives, others replaced them, before pushing on further south over the generations to come. The next stepping stone in the gradually expanding Norwegian sea world were the Orkneys, dwelling place of the elusive Picts.
Holy shit.
Painted men, the Romans called them, descendants of the mysterious
All
rock
these
dwellers.
dudes that,
Or
the Picts are the dudes with the blue paint.
Orkney was a land of ancient edifices, burial mounds, stone circles, and ancient gods.
The Picnic people,
Though
yeah.
it offered a similar landscape and lifestyle to that which the newcomers had originated from.
Okay.
Opinions remain divided as to the ultimate fate of the Orcadians. Whether they'd been enslaved, massacred, or integrated into a new society is anyone's guess. Though, by Bjarne's day, the region was almost entirely Scandinavian in culture. So much so that few even comprehended that these lands had once been entirely independent and a realm of their own. By the
So they
turn of
had
the
people on
millennium,
there first.
Orkney had been home to a semi-independent Viking state for well over 100 years. The finances of its earls, the latest being Sigurd the Stout, heavily supplemented by near yearly raids of the Scottish mainland and the shores of the Irish Sea.
I thought that these islands, all these islands were
According to the Orkney
not even
saga,
inhabited, bro.
writ-
I thought that the Scandinavians were the ones that literally found all these places and inhabited them, but I didn't realize that there was people there before them. You know, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, you know what I mean, Sweden, Norway, Denmark. Shit.
written by an anonymous Icelander in around 1200. Though nominally a Christian now, as was the
That's
new
different.
trend sweeping through the Norselands, Sigurd still terrified his enemies by
Sigurd the
fighting
Stout.
under a raven banner. A
Gang.
throwback to the pagan
Gang.
days of his ancestors. Times were changing, however. Sigurd's son, Thorfinn the Mighty, born to a Scottish mother, though still ruling from a Viking island fortress, had almost as much in common with the Scots as he did with Norway.
Yo, this is what
Only
trips me out. This is what's tripping me out. Is, like, obviously, obviously Britain and shit already had people there, right? Because it was like, what they call them, the, you had the Saxons, the, what are they called? There was the Saxons, is, what were they called? The Tundis or some shit like that. And then there was the Angles, like the Anglos, and the Picts. Now they were they're the beginnings of the Brits. But I thought that the Scandinavians had already been and gone before those niggas already had turned up there. Shit.
Begrudgingly acknowledging Norwegian suzerainty when pushed into it, and heavily
Thorfinn's
involving
island
himself
fortress, Orkney.
in mainland Scottish affairs in the early 11th century.
But how fucking out of it is that? These things are thousands and thousands of years old and you can still go there and see the shit. Alright, bro. You build a building today. You build a building today and you leave it unattended, bro. Leave it unattended. Don't paint it. Don't do nothing to it. Leave it unattended for 100 years. See what it looks like. Then it'll, bro, leave it for 200 years. It'll disappear. You won't see one piece of it, bro. But look, these are thousands of years old. And because we made our shit back then out of natural rock, not cement and shit, we made it out of natural rock. It's lasted to these days today. So why the fuck do we not still build like that? You know what I
Further
mean?
south lay the Hebrides, the Western Isles
Think
of
about
Scotland.
it.
Another
Earthquakes,
bastion of Norse
fucking
culture,
volcanoes,
though one with more of a tinge of
floods,
both
you
than
name
come
it.
before.
some of these places have endured all of
The
that
Isles
shit.
had once been a thriving centre of Gaelic culture, one of the most important in Northern Europe, in the wake of the collapse of the Western Roman Empire.
Oh, I've heard this,
The
but I've
kingdom
heard
at the
that.
heart of it all was once known as Dalriada. Countless fierce and bloody struggles had been fought there in the windswept valleys and archipelagos of the Sea Kingdom for supremacy over the far north of Britain. Though by the 9th century, the latest newcomers to the region soon came out on top. By Bjarne's day, a uniquely Norse-scale culture had begun to form on the Isles, one that would thrive well into the late medieval period, and to a certain extent still exists today. Originally, the northern mainland had been dominated by a hardy, ancient people. Their might forged back during the days when the tendrils of Rome stretched all the way to their borders. Later still, when Rome fell, Irishmen made the short voyage across the sea and began to infringe on Pictish lands. Later still, when Rome fell, Irishmen made the short...
So at the time of the Romans, the Vikings were doing their thing. Right? The Vikings were doing their thing at the time of the Romans, but the difference with the Vikings and shit was... Hear this.
Forged back during the...
The difference with the Vikings and shit was... Y'all niggas was pillaging and shit all around here. And all around here. Right? All through here. All down this area. Y'all motherfuckers were all down here, right? Because it's Kievan Rus. Where the Scandinavians were, the Vikings, you know what I mean? They were doing their thing down here too, so that's around here. So y'all niggas were doing all this shit around here. While the Romans were busy doing all this shit. They didn't fuck with y'all niggas. Y'all didn't fuck with them niggas. Until later.
Dominated by hardy, ancient people.
I feel you.
Their might forged back during the days when the tendrils of Rome stretched all the way to their borders. Later still, when Rome fell, Irishmen made the short voyage across the sea and began to infringe on Pictish lands. Between the time the ships of the Norsemen finally arrived in the late 8th century, those Irishmen known as Scots merged with the mainland Picts until eventually they became one people. By Bjarni's time, at the turn of the millennium, this Scottish kingdom named Alba had been in existence for more than a century, and in just a few years under its king Malcolm II sought to expand its power at the expense of its Anglo-Saxon neighbour.
King Malcolm II.
For this was the time of the first wars between the English and the Scots. Further south lay a haven for corsairs and traders. The Irish Sea, a homeland of Vikings for hundreds of years. In Bjarni's time, fleets of these fierce pirates, many of them Norse in culture, though for the most part born and bred on this side of Europe, ravaged all sides of the sea at will since the collapse of English sea power.
Fucking just ravaging pirates, they just fucking pull up. That's the old school pull up shit. Sea. That's the original pull ups, nigga. Pull up in your boat. 20 deep. Yo, instead of having the big drum and shit, you got like the latest pickaxe, nigga. You got the latest axe with the latest fucking sword with the double-edged fucking, you know what I mean? The latest chainmail, fucking, the dopest fucking helmets and shit.
Lay in the very centre.
Fully
like
loaded,
the Western
nigga.
Isles, a unique
20
culture
deep.
had once thrived here, though now it was a bastion for Norsemen, and later capital of the Kingdom of the Isles. Like Iceland, some of the earliest parliaments in the world, things were held here. Yet the native culture survived here too, in time creating a unique hybrid of Norse, Gael and Britain, and a unique language known as Manx.
Does anyone speak that shit today?
On the west side of the sea, sitting on the River Liffey, sat one of the most important Scandinavian seaports in the world. There, vessels from as far away as Spain, Sweden and the Baltic came into port to sell their wares. All manner of items came in from Central Asia, Northern Africa and the Middle East, as well as human cargo, for Dublin, named for the black pool it was founded on, was one of the primary slave markets in Europe.
Fucking boo Dublin.
The rulers of Dublin had once been some of the most foremost in the British Isles, holding hegemony over the other Viking towns of Ireland, and several native Irish kingdoms too. Until finally, in 980, their long-reigning king, veteran of Brunanburh, Olaf Sitriksson, finally lost a significant battle at the Hill of Tara, the ceremonial ancient capital of the Irish kings.
I'd say I feel for you.
Which significantly reduced his power and the power of all Scandinavians in Ireland. There were other ports too, Cork, Limerick, Waterford and Wexford being the most important, though Dublin always came out on top. The Irish king who had beaten Olaf on that day was Mael Shacnail, High King of the Uí Néill, the traditional holders of that title for 5 centuries.
Oh snap.
Stretching back into the now mythic time of the 5th and 6th centuries.
I fucking quadruple OG, bro.
Though it wouldn't be him that would unite Ireland into a political whole, like it happened in England and Scotland, albeit briefly, for a new power was arising from the south, in the kingdom of Munster, and his name was Brian Boru. The age of Norse supremacy in Ireland was over, though fleets still crossed the sea to raid Wales, Northumbria and Wessex in the wake of the decentralisation of English power.
Doing mad pull-ups. Look at this nigga. Mad pull-ups, hold up.
Over, though fleets still crossed the sea to raid Wales, Northumbria and Wessex in the wake of the decentralisation of English power.
Yo, this looks like one of those maps they show you on the news about last weekend's shootings. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do y'all niggas get that? On the news, they show you, like, where the shootings have been and shit. Well, yeah, they do that. You know, show you, like, where the shootings have been. It looks like one of those. Oh, shit.
There was no getting rid of them, and the descendants of Scandinavians there would remain a force to be reckoned with. Though, for the most part, they now gradually integrated into Irish society, acting as soldiers, merchants and mercenaries, and above all else, the builders of Ireland's very first towns.
Muscle, bro. Hired muscle, bro.
One of the trade routes plied by those Irish Vikings
was long been down the Atlantic seaboard to Iberia,
you got the biggest bag. Where there could always be found eager buyers for slaves.
King of France.
For a time, close to had long been down the Atlantic seaboard to Iberia, where there could always be found eager buyers for slaves. For a time, close to 2 centuries before Bjarni's day.
What would that be? Hold on. What would that like? You got King of Leon, you got King of France, King. What's Calf? What's that? Yo, what the fuck is him?
For a time, close to 2 centuries before Bjarni's day, raiders had come down to Al-Andalus.
Isn't it Spanish or Italian or something, right?
On at least one occasion, to raid deep into the Mediterranean, enslaving and plundering wherever they went.
Self-slaves.
Though now, for the most part, the Scandinavians only plundering wherever they.
Cordoba. Lisbon's still there? Okay. So I know where you at. North Africa, you got North Africa just there. Okay.
They went. Though now, for the most part, the Scandinavians only came as traders, the defence fleet of Al-Andalus being too much of a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, fuck.
The river systems of Francia had been an easier option, plied into by thousands of Vikings.
Bro, maps trip me the fuck out, bro, because, you know, you look at some of the cities and stuff today, and they're still the same names that they were way back then, even though the country's names changed. It's been conquered fucking thousands of times, been conquered hundreds of times, like fucking over and over and over again. And still Munster's still there, and still Hamburg's still there. You know what I mean? And still, you've got Toulouse is still there. I don't know, a lot of these probably are still there. I don't know, Marcel. Milano, shit, bro, Florence. You know what I mean? And a lot of these are before before there was even Italy. There was no Italy, but you still got these fucking. You know what I'm saying? It's dope, bro. I think that's your trip.
Mostly Danes. Dens of them existed in Francia for more than 100 years. Though eventually, the Northlands, formerly known as Neustria, had been formally ceded by the French to one of the most powerful amongst them, a giant of a man known as Rollo the Walker.
Oh shit.
Within a couple of generations, despite repeated attempts to dislodge them,
axe
these
in the
Vikings
hand,
settled down to integrate into society.
With the axe
We
in the
know
hand,
what follows as Normandy. Rouen, a haven for Viking merchants and warlords well into the 11th century. Alongside Dublin and Jorvik, and despite its Christianity, was one of the most significant of all Viking ports. In 991, the Pope attempted to mediate an alliance, or at least understanding, between the English king Ethelred the Unready and the Normans under their Duke, Richard the Fearless. Yet, despite their understanding between the English king Ethelred the Unready and the Normans under their Duke, between the English king Ethelred the Unready and the Normans under their Duke, Richard the Fearless. Yet, despite this, Richard apparently still preferred his Scandinavian cousins, allowing Viking ships to not only come into harbour
Richard
at
the
Rouen,
Fearless.
but to openly trade.
Gangster's nicknames, eh? Gangster's nigga, motherfucking Richard the Fearless, bro. Gangster's nicknames they give you.
Their wares. Though Christian now, the lords of Normandy were well aware of their heritage. Some, notably on the rugged Cotentin Peninsula, home to Norse warlords originating in Ireland and Brittany, still spoke the language of their forefathers. For the most part though, Normans were forward-thinking, and in order to survive began to adopt Frankish customs and marry Frankish princesses.
Oh shit.
Some, however, married Danish princesses, and even called on Danish military support on occasion.
Start getting sneaky about it. They're like, alright, I got another way. I'm gonna fuck they bitches. I'm gonna fuck they bitches. Give them some, they can sire some kids, you know what I mean? We gonna fucking fuck our way into the bloodline. We're gonna fuck our way to the throne. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take over by fucking we're gonna populate that shit.
When Count Richard I stood on the verge of being wiped out and relied on the support of the Danish king Harald Bluetooth.
Oh, the homie. It's the homie that actually Bluetooth is named after, right? King Harold.
By the turn of the millennium, the Norman lords had begun to record their own history.
Check that shit out. Bro, you ain't storming shit.
By the turn of the millennium,
nigga, you ain't storming now. Nigga, you ain't pull up where you like, nigga. Where you gonna pull up? What you pulling up to, nigga? Fucking pull up to brick walls, cuz. Ain't nowhere to dock your boat. Ain't nowhere to run, like, up the... Well, you know what I mean? This is easy to defend if you got enough people, shit. Fucking shoot y'all niggas from the ramparts up here. Bro, y'all need to fix that wall around here, bro. Y'all need some fucking... Need some fucking emergency, some repairs going down here, but shit. Imagine back in the days when this was built, it would have been mecca fucking... That wall would have gone right around this motherfucker. You know what I mean? It would have been hell way more, like... This is just remains, nigga, shit. Damn, cuz. There's a hard fucking castle. The storm berth is just surrounded by... And it's not just surrounded by a moat. It's surrounded by the fucking ocean, cuz. Ain't no moat around that shit. The moat is the whole fucking harbour, nigga. The whole harbour is the moat.
Lords had begun to record their own histories, cementing their newfound Franco-Scandinavian culture, along with vicious suppression of any and all rebellions against their rule. One such rebellion,
Like, you'd need ships with siege towers on them and shit. You'd need ships with fucking ballistic, what do they call them? Ballistic missiles and shit like that. You need all that kind of shit, bro. Ballistas and shit. You need all of that kind of shit for that. To try and storm a castle like that. You wouldn't do it from land. You'd have to do it from ships, bro. Damn.
raised just after the death of the Duke in 996, during the transitional period to the rule of his young son, Richard the Good, seems to have been fought with the aims of mitigating some...
Fuck. This nigga be gutted. Like, what did they call me? Richard the Good. Bro, my grandfather's name was fucking the Fearless, nigga. What the fuck? The Good. Fuck, there was the Beast, there was the Bear, there was the Fearless, there was the fuck, the Good. Oh, bro, fuck. Y'all better come on with something more shit.
One of the harshest feudal laws put in place by the Norman
No, not
rulers
the
of the
Great
region.
or something. Shit, the Good.
Yet, it wasn't to
The
be.
okay.
After a
The
vicious
aye.
bloodbath fought all over the county, once finally rounded up, the leaders of the rebellion suffered a variety of grim fates.
Oh,
Richard
shit.
rounded up, the lead bloodbath fought all over the county. Once finally rounded up, the leaders of the rebellion suffered a variety of grim fates.
Oh, y'all motherfuckers. Y'all some
After
stupid niggas.
Norman rulers of the region. Yet, it wasn't to be. After a vicious bloodbath fought all over the county, once finally rounded up, the leaders of the rebellion suffered a variety of grim fates. Richard's steward, Rodolph of Ivry, indiscriminately having hands and feet cut off, whilst others were blinded, impaled, and burned alive. Eventually, this unique fusion of Scandinavian and Frankish customs
Y'all
would
niggas done
coalesce
fucked up.
to create one of the most effective fighting forces in the world. A unique enclave of adventurers and warriors who would transform lands from Italy to Greece to Palestine, and 2 generations after Bjarni's day would conquer England. But that was in the future. In the late 10th century, England
now, we
was
just go
beset
fuck
by a more
shit up.
ancient foe. The Irish Sea Raiders weren't the only ones to capitalise on the newfound English weakness.
England sick and Viking.
Ethelred's
Okay.
reign had seen a resurgence of Viking attacks, this time led by kings.
England got mad pulled up on. The fucking Vikings were fucking with the English like on mad pull-ups, nigga. Holy shit. What we got here? Sussex, East Anglia. Munster, Leinster. Oh yeah, gotcha.
Illustrious figures such as Svein Forkbeard and Olaf Tryggvason.
Forkbeard. See, now that's some gangster shit. Forkbeard, nigga. Fucking Fearless and all this shit. Fucking the Good.
Despite its divisions, England was still powerful and rich. Just after the millennium, launching an ultimately unsuccessful raid on Normandy in an attempt to bring the Duke Richard II to heel. For England, though fragmenting into societal chaos, on a good year had far more resources to call on than Normandy.
I see.
Originally 7 distinct kingdoms, possessing a culture not too dissimilar to their Scandinavian cousins.
So the kind was down, but they
In the
wouldn't.
mid-9th century, the Anglo-Saxons saw their lands invaded en masse, at first by small raiding parties, not long after the Norsemen first arrived in Ireland and Scotland to the north, but later by vast armadas led by rulers who called themselves Kings of the Sea. Those who invaded England from around 850 onwards, at first taking the outlying isles of Kent and Essex in the southeast,
Mad
were
pull-ups.
mostly Danes, some of whom were also active in Francia at the same time, where they infested the river systems. Unlike in Francia, the Danes had much more lasting success in England, very nearly wiping the Anglo-Saxons out for good.
Damn.
Only a valiant last stand by the men of Wessex and Mercia stemmed the tide, seeing just one kingdom and a rump state left behind by 878,
God
and an
damn.
island divided between Englishman and Dane. It was the ensuing struggle, fought by one generation after another to reclaim the lands of the Danelaw, that saw the birth of a single Anglo-Saxon kingdom, reaching its heights in the 930s during the reign of the great king Athelstan, first to bear the title King of the English. Norsemen and Danes marched in his ranks alongside men from Mercia, Wessex and Kent, and though Northumbria relapsed in the 940s and 950s, seized by the kings of Dublin, as well as for a time by Eric Bloodaxe, a rogue Norwegian prince,
See, bro. Look at this nigga's name, bro. Eric Bloodaxe, bro. That's why I was saying that old nigga that, what they call him, Richard the Good, or something like that. He would have been gutted on his name. He'd be like, the fuck? The Good. Nigga, what? Bloodaxe. Fuck the fuck.
Steeped in the Viking ancestry of his forefathers, by the 960s and 970s, the land was consolidated, reaching its apex under King Edgar the Peacemaker. His fleets, manned by Anglo-Danish sailors, descendants of the Great Heathen Army, traversed the British Isles and the Irish Sea, ending piracy there, and Edgar even standing as judge over the disputes of lesser kings.
Oh, he in the piracy. Oh, he in there.
Rather than infringe on their Danish culture, English rule lent the Anglo-Scandinavian settlers of the Danelaw a newfound sense of stability and invulnerability to carry out their business without fear of attack, which they did on a massive scale, leading Jorvik to become one of the foremost seaports in Europe. Archaeological excavations carried out here have uncovered not just coins and items from all over Eurasia, but mints to make coins too, a sign of the immense wealth and stability enjoyed here during the first half of the 10th century.
They're making their own shit. Making their own money.
Ultimately, it was precisely this success that was to be the downfall of the Anglo-Saxons. With no more lands to conquer, ambitious sons of lords could only inherit part of their father's lands, and no more. Factionalism, just like in Francia, a blight on the European mainland too, became rife. And then, right on cue, the Danes returned, this time led by a king.
Oh, you're fucked now.
In the year 1000, at the same time as Leif Erikson and his men clung on to their settlement half a world away on the far side of the Atlantic, a brutal sea battle took place somewhere amidst the wild archipelagos of the Danish Sea.
War now.
Much had changed since the time of the Great Heathen Army 140 years before, where once hundreds of petty chieftains, calling themselves kings, had ruled over spits of land from Dublin to Sweden. Now, in the Scandinavian mainland at least, just a handful held that title with any real authenticity. At the top of the pile sat just two men. The first was perhaps the more impressive of the two. Standing atop his flagship, the mighty Long Serpent, for the saga writers of 13th century Iceland, the greatest longship ever built, bedecked with glittering golden armour and scarlet cape, stood Olaf Tryggvason, King of Norway, a Christian now due to the power the new faith from the south held the potential to bestow. Yet, a man who had been raiding on the high seas for decades, ravaging lands from Russia to Ireland ever since he was forced into exile
Big
as a
OG.
boy.
The big homie on the sea.
At this time, Tryggvason was attempting to convert the other northerners to Christianity. More often than not, at the tip of a sword. Often hideously torturing people who defied him in adhering to their pagan traditions.
Savage.
Before Tryggvason's time, Norway had still been divided into various petty kingdoms, the most important of which, situated around modern-day Trondheim in the west of the country, held similar amounts of power to the crown lands of the south, ruled over by descendants of Harald Fairhair, the first unifier of Norway and Tryggvason's ancestor. These Jarls of Lade, staunch pagans, remained a perennial thorn
So
in
why
the
was no one
side
fucking with
of
Finland at
Norwegian
the time?
kings.
What was Finn's up to?
In the year 1000, Tryggvason sailed north from the southern shores of the Baltic Sea, perhaps after securing aid from the
Like, what was Finn's up to? Look at all that land and shit. How come no one was messing with these niggas?
Slavic power brokers who ruled there. Waiting for him, however, along with an armada of over 100 longships, was a man just as feared and respected throughout the Viking world, and his main rival for power, Svein Forkbeard, King of Denmark.
This nigga.
By the year 1000, Denmark, the strongest and most populous of the Scandinavian kingdoms,
Because it's the oldest.
was home to a number of small towns, the most important of which, Hedeby, jewel in the crown of the Danish kings, straddled the southeastern reaches of the Jutland Peninsula, acting as an artery of trade from the Baltic through to the North Sea. According to later chroniclers such as Adam of Bremen, ships came into port here from all over Europe, including Greece and Spain, though unlike its brother ports at Jorvik, Rouen and Dublin, Hedeby's days were numbered. In a Viking world, there is always the threat of oblivion if the wrong political moves are made. In just a handful of decades, Hedeby would be wiped off the map by the vengeful Norwegian king Harald Hardrada after the Danes opposed his invasion attempts, never to be rebuilt, though other power centres remained at sites on the more defensible islands such as Roskilde. On paper, Svein had a much better pedigree than the charismatic and ruthless Olaf, being the grandson of Gorm the Old, first unifier of Denmark and son of Harald Bluetooth, a man who, having been taught the art of statecraft by Imperial Germany, had claimed authority over much of Norway in the previous decades. Bluetooth had built giant fortresses in Denmark to cement his authority, as well as refortifying the Great Danevirk against the south.
Oh shit. Yo.
The Great Danevirk against...
Think these were dwellings? Yeah. Yeah, they have to be. Well, I'm only guessing.
The south. Though ultimately the Germans simply went round this in the early 10th century, before being thrown out.
Is that where the Danevirk gets its name from in my country? It must be.
Again, only after Denmark converted to Christianity. Though he...
Because we've got the Fjordlands too. And it's, the fjords is Scandinavian.
Was likely a Christian himself, Svein had masterly unified the resentments felt against Olaf throughout Scandinavia into a resurgent pagan alliance of sorts.
Like, look at the Finns, they've just been chilling the whole time and they ain't see shit about these niggas.
There, in the frosted waters of the Baltic, Svein's ally, Erik Hakonsson, the Jarl of Lade, only second in power in Norway to Olaf, and possessor of a similarly famous longship, the Ironbeard, made a beeline for Olaf's ship, Finally, after slaughtering scores of men sent against him, the outnumbered and exhausted Tryggvason leapt from his vessel into the icy waters of the Baltic Sea, never to be seen again.
That's gangster. With all this shit on, he just jumped overboard. He would have sunk straight to the bottom, G. That's gangster, G.
The path was clear for Svein to unify the North, the first ruler to truly hold sway over the entirety of Norway and Denmark.
Oh, he killed him. He killed him.
The disparate realms of the Swedes were soon brought to heel too.
Oh, no way.
And Svein could finally dedicate his time to England, finally conquering it in 1013 and forming the North Sea Empire for the first time in history.
All this shit. He was that nigga.
Ultimately, Svein would not live long enough to enjoy his newfound empire, dying after only a few weeks as King of England. Though his young son Canute would carry the torch, inheriting his army, unifying the North, and ruling as a new Charlemagne. It wasn't just Danes, Norwegians and Swedes who fought in Canute's armies. His mother may have been a Slavic princess, and when Canute conquered England in the early 11th century, significant contingents of Poles and Wends likely fought in his armies too. These mostly still pagan fighters had long proven stalwart allies against their common foes to the south, in the form of the all-powerful and expansionist German kingdom. And eventually, they stood side by side in the shield wall, along with Saxon housecarls, Danish sailors, Swedish mercenaries, and Norwegian raiders.
Anyway, that was Scandinavian.
But this alliance between Poles and Norsemen goes back much further.
Oh shit.
It has long been known that early medieval Germany aided Denmark in its transformation to a modern unified kingdom. But what isn't generally known is the role that Scandinavians in turn had in state formation for their southern Slavic neighbours. Most notably, the patchwork of tribes that around the turn of the millennium would become the Kingdom of Poland.
I heard that they used to,
in the latter half of the 10th
they used to
century,
sit in this is what I heard, bro. I've heard this in other. Oh shit. Hold up, y'all. I don't think that's a good. I don't think that's a good song. Fuck. My hand's bleeding like fuck. Fuck. Damn.
ruled over by Duke Mieszko, a powerful military leader known by some as the King of the North. Mieszko constructed vast fortresses all over his realm and was said by one near-contemporary writer to have a force of 3,000 mounted warriors at his disposal, all equipped with the most up-to-date military equipment of the age. Recent archaeological finds in Poland have shed some light on the origins of some of these elite retainers of the Duke. with at least some of the origins of these swords for hire residing in Scandinavia, suggesting either Viking heritage or Polish warriors with a career in Scandinavia under their belts. Eventually, Poland under Mieszko's son Bolesław would join Sweden under Olaf Skotkonung, Denmark under Svein Forkbeard, and Norway under Olaf Tryggvason in converting to Christianity at around the same time, with coins minted during these kings' reigns, all looking remarkably similar, suggesting a linked-up cultural system. Despite what later chroniclers say to the contrary, Bolesław wasn't the only king to hold significant power in modern-day Poland. On the shores of the Baltic Sea resided at least one stronghold of Vikings, a mercenary band of warriors whose exploits later became the subject of their own saga. For this was the home of the Joms Vikings.
It just keeps bleeding through. They said if it keeps bleeding through, you have to come back. So
but of course, Scandinavia wasn't just a land of fighters. For the most part, Norsemen were settlers, explorers, and traders first. In the 9th century, traders such as Ottir of Hålogaland made expeditions far to the north, to the frozen White Sea at the edge of the Arctic Circle. There he found a land of polar bears, walruses, and Inuit reindeer herders. Others travelled to the far south, along the Atlantic seaboard to the Iberian Peninsula, and Africa beyond, to trade their slaves for the rich wares of the Islamic world. And yet more took the sea roads east to the far shores of the Baltic Sea.
Got you.
There they found a land of lakes and forests, a similar culture to the Norsemen, though a very different language. More similar to the Magyars, who once ravaged East Francia, and now settled down in the Pannonian Basin to become the Hungarians, but not before launching their own Viking-esque raids far and wide throughout Europe. Finland, a near impenetrable place of frozen woodland, like Lapland to the north, a home to sorcerers and wizards. Perhaps a reference to the differing religious customs of the people here. This land, known as the Finnmark, remained largely depopulated during the Viking Age. Though when Vikings did travel here in the sagas, such as the future Norwegian king Olaf Haraldsson allegedly did in his youth, they suffered some of their worst defeats at the hands of Finnish archers. It would be many centuries yet before towns and cities sprung up here in the harsh conditions, though Finns would leave their homeland to take up lucrative service in the warbands of Scandinavians. If you can't beat them, join them.
Wicked. I didn't know that.
By far the most numerous nationality besides Norwegians and Danes in Forkbeard and Knut's armies were Swedes. Large numbers of them would also find later service in the armies of the Norwegian king Olaf Haraldsson, hailed as a Christian.
That's dope, bro. Fuck that, I know that about. I didn't realize it. You couldn't conquer the Finns, nigga.
Saint.
You couldn't do it.
Joining him as they marched to their deaths against Knut, chanting pagan songs.
They joined your ass. They didn't get conquered by no one.
These men were descended from the Vendel culture. Very little is known about this elusive pre-literate period, incredible amounts of archaeological evidence remains. Arguably, literate period.
Look at that old ass mosque, nigga.
Culture.
That's old ass chainmail, nigga.
Very little is known about this elusive pre-literate period, though incredible amounts of archaeological
That's how it looks now. Holy shit.
evidence remains. arguably more so than the Viking Age. Interestingly,
That's how it would've looked
when
on me.
these helmets were made, they are very
that's how it
similar
looks
to
now.
those
Oh.
found at Sutton Hoo in England,
Stop playing.
perhaps signifying a linked-up cultural sphere in the 5th and 6th centuries, following the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Yet, Sweden was by no means a unified
Oh,
land.
bro, it's tripping.
The lake area of the Swedish uplands were separated from the south of modern-day Sweden by vast tracts of wild forest and wilderness.
Malmo was still, Malmo. Shit, Malmo's still around now. You ain't even trying to fuck around in Malmo, neither. Malmo the hood, nigga. Malmo's the trenches. Hamburg's still here. Munster. Shit. Essex and all that shit.
For this was the land of the Geats, legendary homeland to the Goths, and home to the eponymous hero of the Beowulf legend of later Anglo-Saxon
What do you call them? Do you call them the
Home
Geats?
was the land of the Geats,
Oh, yeah.
legendary homeland to the Goths, and home to the eponymous hero of the Beowulf legend of later Anglo-Saxon England.
Oh, shit.
By the turn of the millennium, the Geats and the Swedes had waged
Hold
of the Beowulf legend, legendary homeland to the Goths, and home to the eponymous hero of the Beowulf legend of later Anglo-Saxon England.
Oh, shit.
By the turn of the millennium,
We all know
the
this
Geats
nigga,
and the
Beowulf. We
Swedes
all know this
had
nigga.
waged ceaseless, yet mostly unrecorded wars against one another within the dark forests and groves for hundreds of years.
I was laughing before Jay because you had all these Scandinavians are going through all these names, and they're like the king of the bars, Forkbeard, and then they'd say his son who ended up taking over. His name was they'd say something like fuck. They'd say all these dope ass names, bro, right? Like Bloodthirst and shit. And Fearless and all this, and then you had this one dude, and they're like, and then his son who became king after him, Richard, Richard Good, what do they call him? Richard the Good. I was like, bro, he would have been gutted. He'd be like, what the fuck, Richard the Good? Nigga, what the fuck? What about Bloodthirst? Like, what the fuck? I mean, the Good. Nigga, you had fucking something like Leon the fucking Bear Hunter or something. The Bear, some shit. Yeah, that was his name, Richard the. Oh, you had Leon the Bear. You had fucking Forkbeard. You had fucking you had someone the Mad. You had fucking the Fearless. You had the Witch Hunter. Yeah, and then you got this nigga. Oh, the Good. Oh, fuck, what? Oh, nah, bro. What do you mean the Good? Oh, you better come correct, nigga. Fuck that. Oh, hell no. I would have been like, nah, nigga. Y'all niggas need to rename my shit. I would have fucked the author up. I'd be like, did you type my name up like that, nigga?
By the year 1000, a dynasty of Swedish kings had to a certain extent unified the country, though their power was still limited by independent-minded nobles, perhaps best exemplified by their complete inability to push Christianity upon the people, unlike in Norway and Denmark. Despite many of the best warriors hailing from this kingdom, the latest king of the Swedes, Olaf Skotkonung, whose name may in fact translate as rent-paying king, owed his crown to his neighbouring monarchs.
Oh, that's the worst one I've heard. Fuck that, I'll take the good. I'll have the good things. You know I'm sweet with that one. The rent paying? Nigga, fuck that. I ain't paying the rent paying.
As rent-paying king, owed his crown to his neighbouring monarchs, legitimised simply by his affiliation with the other Scandinavian kings. Despite Olaf converting to Christianity, just like the other kings of the north, such...
Look at these names. Forkbeard. Tryggvason. Look at this shit. Forkbeard and fucking the Brave. You know what I mean? Shit. Stop playing.
Was the decentralised nature and remoteness of his state that Sweden would remain largely pagan until the 12th century.
I didn't know that.
Further to the east lay a harsh and unforgiving land of forests and groves.
I thought Sweden was always
a collection of fiercely pagan clans resided within the mysterious land. Scandinavians had headed across the Baltic for centuries in search of slaves and plunder, but found little in terms of riches, nor any towns to speak of. The ancestors of today's Latvians and Estonians were a hardy folk, and fought tooth and nail against anyone who came their way. One of the earliest accounts we have of the Baltic coasts is from a trader who frequented the court of King Alfred the Great, Wulfstan of Hedeby, and it seems likely that trade links...
You said his name was?
Wulfstan of Hedeby, and it seems likely that trade links and cultural exchange flourished for centuries.
Come your motherfuckers got some cool names.
In the year 1000, the Njals saga records a raid into the modern-day Baltic states by a certain the Njals saga.
This nigga's seen that. I didn't even read it, you typed it, man.
Records a raid into the modern-day Baltic states by a certain Icelander named Gunnar Hammundarsson. Just one of innumerable such...
Call his name. See. And he put the now on the end. Itchy coochie now. Oh shit. Yeah, nah. See, that's the best one. Fucking Diddy on that one. But you can't even say it without putting the S on the end of it, bro. You're just gonna say C nut is C nut is probably the funniest one. That wins every day of the week. That's fucking good, bro. Oh shit.
Literary accounts. As far as modern-day Baltic states by a certain Icelander named Gunnar Hammundarsson. Just one of innumerable such literary accounts. As far as the sagas are concerned at least, the realm Gunnar and his men entered was populated by sea rovers, near indiscernible to those found in Scandinavia.
Gunnar.
Perhaps due to its proximity to Sweden, the island of Saramea is thought to have been the wealthiest county of ancient Estonia.
Oh snap. Really?
And was the home of notorious Estonian pirates, often called the Eastern Vikings, for hundreds of years to come.
Oh snap.
More recently, pre-Viking Age burials known as the Salm ships, have been found in Estonia's Sov Peninsula, lending further support to the multitudes of Baltic peoples found in the sagas, fighting in Viking warbands alongside Finns, Sami, Welshmen, Scots, and Irishmen, to name a few. Though when Scandinavia proper converted to Christianity, these links would fairly quickly be severed. When the descendants of Vikings fought their crusades in the centuries to come, they were fought against these Baltic peoples. During the Viking Age, the Swedes had much more luck to the south. Beginning in the 9th century, just as Norsemen arrived in Britain from the port at Staraya Ladoga on the shores of Lake Ladoga, their longships plied further south still, into the wild river systems of Eastern Europe. There they found marshlands, forests and plains, and people, fiercely independent and split into a multitude of tribes and clans. Sakaliba, the Arabs called them. We know them as Slavs. Those opportunistic Sakaliba, the Arabs called them. We know them as Slavs. Those opportunistic Swedes who plied the river systems were only the hardiest, tattooed, brutal warriors. They subjugated and enslaved some of the locals, and intermarried with others. By Bjarni's day, a unique culture had long been forged, and those distant ancestors, for the most part, had become Slavicized. For this was the Kievan Rus.
before.
Though their kinsmen from the north were always welcome, marriage alliances were frequent between Rus and Scandinavian, and countless princes and magnates from either area, when exiled, fled to kinsmen in the other, only to return at a later date accompanied by significant forces of Scandinavian swords for hire.
Got you.
Mostly Swedes, who, as time went on, would become known as Varangians, or pledge givers.
Bro, it's crazy, G.
Though
They've got but ancient though. They're old. They're old as fuck. They old. You know what I mean?
the Rus began worshipping Slavic gods, such as Perun, the deity of thunder. For many, these were simply the same gods with different names. The Rus traded with the Volga Bulgars, distant kinsmen to the Bulgarians, who had now become Christian and mostly been subjugated by the Eastern Romans after a lengthy, brutal conflict,
fucking Christians,
in part
eh, right?
caused by the Rus leader, Svatoslav.
Chinese. Shit.
Now resembling a steppe Khan more than a Viking warlord. Soon enough, the Rus would convert too, with their ruler, Vladimir, converting to Christianity in 986.
So where's the fucking Vladimir?
Like moths to a flame,
Is Vladimir Putin? What? And it's Vladimir Zelensky. And they're both at war with each other.
these Rus
Hey, and both their ancestors right here. Motherfucking Vladimir.
and Swedish warriors had long been drawn to the richest and oldest state in Europe. Ancient Rome never fell in the east. It merely relocated to Constantinople. They knew it as Miklagard, the great city, a metropolis of hundreds of thousands during a time when most of Europe's cities numbered no more than 5,000, and in Scandinavia, much less than that.
Really?
But between the Rus and the Romans lay a vast open sea, and above that, a wild steppe land, populated by a people perhaps even more fierce than the Rus. steppe riders. For Christian writers, the descendants of Gog and Magog, the horsemen of the apocalypse.
Oh shit, ride by.
The Pechenegs had once been subjects to a vast conglomeration of semi-sedentary steppe tribes, themselves descendants of a once mighty empire that had spanned the entire steppe from China to Europe.
Now,
The Khazar Khagans. Though now their power had been shattered, largely through the actions of the Rus prince Svatoslav, whose rampage across the north of the Black Sea saw their subject peoples, the Pechenegs and the Oghuz Turks, ancestors of the Seljuks, escape from their suzerainty. The destruction of the Khazars gave the Rus access to a new area, one they had already plied into previously, but could now do so even more: the Caspian Sea, the land they knew as Cirkland. For hundreds of years, Scandinavian adventurers had made the long journey down through the river systems of Eastern Europe to trade slaves and furs for the silver of the Islamic world. We know this from the staggeringly enormous amounts of Abbasid coins found in places such as Gotland and the Swedish uplands.
bro, apparently one of those
What
coins
happened
is
when
worth
the Arabs didn't
fucking
want to
shitload of
trade
shit.
with the men who'd lugged their
I was watching
ships
that porn
all the way
stars
down
once.
to their shores?
And if fucking someone coming to
By the
pawn one
turn
of
of the
these
millennium,
coins,
the silver
it was
supply
worth
of the
fucking
once
worth
mighty
heaps, bro.
caliphate had largely dried up, and with it had gone much of the trade. But of course, the Scandinavians had other ways of acquiring wealth. At this time, the southern and western shores of the Caspian Sea
straight
were
pull-ups.
controlled by breakaway Islamic dynasties, most notably the soon-to-be all-powerful Samanid Empire. And it was they who bore the brunt of Viking aggression once Abbasid silver
Straight
dried
pull-ups
up
on
in the
me.
10th century.
Screw.
And beyond that, for the most hardy of travellers, lay an even greater city than Constantinople,
What?
perhaps numbering close to 1 million people in its prime. Arguably the mirror image of Miklagard, the beating heart of the once mighty Abbasid Caliphate, Baghdad.
Okay.
From there, the road went even further east, into Central Asia and the trade cities of the Silk Road. Samarkand,
Baghdad
Bukhara,
is that
and Merv,
old.
huge metropolises, far larger than any in Europe.
Baghdad
Coins
that
from
old,
here
G.
show up as far away as Northumbria, illustrating the trade links between these disparate lands. And beyond that, one could travel all the way to China. Runestones in Sweden record journeys well into the 11th century. Some hardy Swedes, such as Ingvar the Far-Travelled, became embroiled in wars on the
That's his
eastern
name.
side of the Byzantine Empire,
Ingvar.
in the nation of
the
Georgia,
Far-Travelled,
and beyond
bro.
into the
That's
Middle
his
East.
name, G.
Smaller, unrecorded
fire,
expeditions
the
surely must have
far-travelled,
occurred
nigga.
too.
Can't get
Though,
any more
just like the Bulgarians before them,
You didn't have to explain to anyone why the fuck they call him that, right? If someone said, why do they call him that? Oh, bro, slap your fucking self. Bro, are you trying to make me waste my breath? Like, whack.
the Rus more and more came into
You
the
probably
cultural
travelled
sphere
far, you
of the great city.
fucking...
As the years went by, increasingly seeking to gain access to its riches through diplomacy rather than war. By the turn of the millennium, in one of the most momentous events in history,
You ain't gotta guess why the fuck they called him that, cause he travelled far, motherfucker.
a force of 8,000 Rus entered the service of the Emperor Basil II. Their descendants would continue to serve Byzantine emperors
Bro, you can't
well into
live.
the late
You'd be surprised though, eh? You'd be surprised though, eh? There's that old person. There's that old person. And you're just like, did you ask that, bro? Are you really not sure? For real, for it. Oh shit. Okay, they exist there. Alright.
medieval period,
Okay, they exist.
defending the great city
I thought
they
y'all
had once
motherfuckers was
sought
a
to
myth.
conquer until its final defeat
I
at the
made a
hands of the
dumbass
Ottoman
like a real
Turks in 1453.
Shit.
Before the Viking Age, post-Roman Europe was inward-looking. After it, lands from North America to China were linked up into a singular economic system.
Like you gotta
The
laugh
most
first, right?
wide-reaching.
Someone else, why they call him that, bro? And you laugh first because you think he's joking. You're like, you crack up. You look twice and like, you for real, cuz? Like, you didn't know wonder why they call him that. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh fuck. And then you look back at him, bro, and he goes, us. What? Yeah. What? What? Nigga, come here.
Since the fall of Rome, the Viking Age continued near seamlessly into the Crusades, and eventually the opening up of Europe into a truly global world system for the first time in history. I'm often asked where I find the information that goes into my videos.
Look at the writing,
and there's a very simple
Look at how
answer.
they spell shit. Look at
books,
the fucking
books,
text is
and
crazy,
more
G.
videos. And there's a very simple answer. Books, books, and more books. And for me,
for niggas from Finland and shit, from Sweden and all that, looking at it going, bro, it's just how we write over here.
There's nothing better than getting stuck into a great audiobook. I'll do this when I'm on the bus, when I'm out walking, when I'm cooking, pretty much all of the time that previously would have been wasted, I can now use to read. I'm honoured to announce that this video is sponsored by my favourite audiobook provider, and probably my favourite app on my phone, Audible. It is incredible.
Okay. That was dope though. That was far. Your boy's hard as fuck. It's been an hour and a half. Yo, I'll catch you on the next one, my nigga. It'll probably be in about an hour's time when I blaze before I go to bed. Peace.